Here's Bobby Fischer, the most famous chess player ever, burying former world champion Vasily Smyslov. Smyslov takes too long to bring out his pieces, so Fischer never gives him the chance to catch up. Fischer's advantage in time seems almost negligible at first, but like a snowball rolling downhill, he soon has an avalanche heading Smyslov's way. Smyslov, playing white, opens with pawn to c4, the English opening. Watch as Fischer fights for control of the center and quickly brings out his pieces. The basic principles of the opening apply to everyone, even world champions. Both players have fianchettoed their king-bishops to long, powerful diagonals. Smyslov trades off Fischer's powerful bishop, but loses time in the process because he has to move his knight twice. Because of the time white has already lost, he needs to catch up in development, not push pawns. For this reason, it would have been better to play knight to f3. It's not good for white to open up the position so soon like this, because his king is still in the middle of the board. It would have been better to castle right away. Wow, what a diagonal for the bishop! Observe how Fischer finds the most powerful squares for his pieces. Smyslov was probably expecting black to recapture the pawn. However, Fischer had something else in mind. White has prematurely opened up the position, and Fischer takes advantage of this. He gains more time by attacking the loose knight. In chess, the smallest event can have great significance. This sacrifice by Fischer of a lowly pawn will echo to the end of the game. This knight locks Smyslov in a chokehold. He must immediately destroy it. Now Fischer bursts in with queen takes knight check. Ouch! White has no good way to meet this check. Queen to d2 leaves the rook en prise. And if white tries knight to d2, Fischer would have an overwhelming position after knight to b4, as it's impossible to meet both of the devastating threats. Knight to c2 check, and knight to d3 check. Therefore, Smyslov must forego castling and move his king. While one of Smyslov's rooks is shut in by his king, Fischer quickly deploys a rook of his own to an open file, and by attacking Smyslov's queen gains even more time. If Fischer had tried to grab pawns instead of stacking up small advantages, he would have fallen into a deep and deadly trap. And white wins the night. Let's pick it up where we left off. Now Fischer says check, and check again, and drives Smyslov's king deeper into the corner. The white rook has been buried alive. Fischer, on the other hand, easily brings his other rook into the game. Fischer has sacrificed a pawn, but this has been well worth the advantage that he has obtained in time. All of his pieces are much more coordinated than Smyslov's, whose rook on h1 is particularly miserable. Watch how Fischer attacks white's weaknesses before Smyslov can get his pieces organized. The first target is the lonely pawn on c4. With this move, Smyslov tries to excavate the rook from its tomb. He doesn't have the time to, instead, take the pawn on b6, because then Fischer could quickly organize his pieces for an onslaught against the weakness at f2. For example, a possible continuation is knight captures on c4, queen to b3, queen to d2, pawn to a4, knight to b2, pawn to a5, knight to d3, rook to f1, rook to c1, pawn to a6, queen captures on f2, checkmate. Let's get back to the action and see what really happened. Fischer gets his pawn back. The opposing armies are even in material, but Black's position is far superior. You wouldn't want to be playing the white pieces here. The queen is Smyslov's only active piece. With this in mind, Fischer instantly made his next move. Now White has to trade off his only piece that's actually doing something. Smyslov is still trying to unearth that rook. Fischer continues to find good squares for his pieces. With his next move, Fischer breaks the pin on his knight. Finally, the buried rook claws its way back from the grave. Now we are definitely in an endgame, and the winner of this endgame will be determined by time, as the passed pawns race to queen. Fischer has been working all game to gain time on his opponent. That work pays off handsomely now. One of the most important principles of the endgame is that passed pawns must be pushed. This cuts off the Black King's escape hatch. But of course, Fischer isn't going to fall for the old back rank trick, rook to a8, checkmate. So he avoids it by moving his king. White would like to win Fischer's c-pawn by chasing his knight with pawn to f4, but then the American would play knight to g4, and now rook takes c4 would be met by rook captures on g2, check, king captures on g2, knight captures on e3, check, forking White's king and rook. Let's return to the actual game. With Fischer threatening to quickly advance his passed c-pawn, Smyslov maneuvers his rook into a better position to stop it. Check. Smyslov, one of the greatest endgame players ever, knows that a rook is best placed behind a passed pawn. Smyslov has halted Fischer's c-pawn, but to do so, he had to abandon his own pawn. Now Fischer mops up White's weak pawns. Check. Here, Smyslov resigned, as he is 2 pawns down and without any hope. A likely continuation might be rook to b1, check, king to g2, rook to b2, check, king to h3, knight to g4, bishop to g2, pawn to e5. Fischer's e-pawn is threatening to queen in 4 moves. And there's no way to stop it without surrendering even more material. Smyslov knew he was finished. In chess, if you have the advantage in time, you've gone a long way toward burying your opponent. It's as simple as that, especially if you're Bobby Fischer.